Hey guys, welcome to another installment of the TonePrint Editor series. Today we're talking about the Flashback. You already knew that, you've read it in the title. Before we start, I just want to do a quick housekeeping thing. First of all, thank you to everybody who's contributed on my pedal platform coffee page. It's really nice of you, it really helps the channel. So if you find these videos useful, please do so. And as I always do, I'm going to be referencing some previous videos on the TonePrint Editor series. So if you haven't watched them yet, just pop over to the playlists page. If you watch the Hall of Fame bit, you know that there are a few algorithms hidden inside these pedals, all of them accessible through the presets and templates that TC Electronic provides for us. In the case of the Flashback, there aren't as many templates as there are with the Hall of Fame, but there are still a few, and depending on the type of delay that you want to create, you might want to hunt a bit for the correct ones. You've got digital, you've got digital dual delay, you've got the tape analog algorithm. This is new for the Flashback II series, so Plethora X5 has this algorithm. You've got ping pong, which is very similar to digital. You've got reverse delay, which is the same thing as the digital, but obviously reversed. And you've got crystal, which again is based on the digital delay, but with the Octave on top. Again, if you watch the Hall of Fame, you know that activating the Octave effect isn't as simple as just clicking a box. You really need to start with a template that already has it activated. But enough waffling about, let's talk about the digital. You've already seen these tabs up here. If you haven't, please go check the first couple of installments of the series. Starting with the Flashback, with the things that are pertinent to the Flashback, we start as usual with the router, something tab. And this is where you find your typical options. You find your input level, i.e. how much of your guitar or other instrument signal goes into the effects engine. You've got the effects level, i.e. the output of the effects engine to the pedal, and the Octave output. Again, unless you have started already with a template that has the Octave active, this isn't doing anything. In this case, I'm using my digital TonePrint, which is based off a 2290 digital delay emulation. This won't do anything. And my kill dry does exactly that. It kills the dry signal. So I've got guitar as usual. So a couple of examples. This is a very simple delay. Okay, as digital as it can be, basically. If I cut my input level, you hear my guitar, but you don't hear any delay. So I'm going to bump this up again. Okay, if I cut my effects level, again, you hear my guitar, but you don't hear anything else. And if I cut, or if I activate my kill dry, you don't hear the guitar. I have the microphone picking up the guitar sound, so you will hear it through the microphone, but you will only hear the effect coming out of the pedal itself. So that's all for the router tab. We'll come back later for the Octave output. Let me just cut my guitar signal. And now we advance to the big one, the delay tab. On the digital algorithm, this is what we get. We have delay number 1, time. As usual, you can also see that it's got a little link chain thing at the top. This means that this parameter is mapped to one of the physical knobs on the pedals. As usual, I'm also using the Plethora X5. You can't see it because I don't have a camera on it, but if I twiddle the pot, you can see, according to the screen on the right, that the delay is varying according to that ramp that's established there. I'm going to leave it at 400 milliseconds. On the 2290 algorithms, delay can vary between 0 milliseconds and 7000 milliseconds, 7 seconds. This is a really long delay time, which is really useful. So if I put it on 0, basically what you hear is the filtering of my dry sound being mixed with my processed sound at 0 milliseconds. So you just get this really weird filtering effect, i.e. some cancellation in some frequencies and not on others. So as I start increasing my delay time, then you start getting progressively longer delays. And if I do 7 seconds, we're going to be here for a while. If you notice, it's still catching up the sound of the things that I played before I moved to the 7 seconds time. So it's picking up everything that it has on its internal buffer and throwing it back at the pedal. So be aware of this. Whenever you change your delay time to longer delay times, it might start throwing out sounds that you don't expect. So it's the stuff that's on the buffer that it's going to throw at you. You can also see here, delay number 2, this is grayed out. We will come back to this later. As you probably know by now on the TC TonePrint Editor, grayed out parameters usually become active in algorithms that can use them. So the regular delay doesn't use it. We'll come back to that in a bit. So the next active parameter is feedback. So at 0%, you get one repeat, one exact repeat. At maximum, which is 120, you kind of need to be careful because it starts feeding back on itself. So it's the self-regenerating feedback. Basically, it's self-regenerating delay. It means that what the feedback does, in a very short explanation, what the feedback does is takes your initial signal, passes it to the delay engine, and feeds it back to the beginning, which is why you get the repeats. The feedback control is like a little volume pot on the feedback circuit. So if you have it at 0, it's off. So it passes on the delay engine, your dry signal passes the delay engine and goes to the output delayed. As you start opening up the volume on your feedback path, then you start getting progressively more repeats coming through the engine. If you have 100%, it means that everything that's coming out of the delay engine is going to go back in, which is how you can, let me set this at 100, which is how you can do stuff like okay, so basically it's feeding back to the beginning. It's going to go on for as long as it can. If you are above 100%, it means that you are literally increasing the amount of sound that goes through the feedback loop, which means that every time it goes through the feedback loop, it increases even more, which is why it goes into self-oscillation, self-regeneration, and if you're not careful, it'll blow your speakers or distort and saturate your amp, whatever, something like that. So very flexible, be careful. Normal parameters are usually between 0 and 100, but it's nice to have the option. So I've changed to a clean sound so you can listen to the saturation parameter. Saturation is a bit of distortion applied to the feedback loop. So can you hear the increase in level? I'm going to jump forward a bit and bring down the output level so that we're not... I'm also controlling it on the pedal itself. I'm going to increase the saturation to the maximum so you can hear the difference. You can hear it cracking now. This is not a level thing. It's not my preamp distorting. This is a slight distortion sound applied to the delay feedback. Funny story, if I kill my dry sound and bring my delay to 0, this is now my guitar sound processed by a 0 delay at 0 feedback, i.e. it's just the one sound with all of the saturation applied. The next two parameters are two filters applied to the feedback loop, a high cut and a low cut. They do exactly what their name implies. This one cuts high frequencies down from 20 kilohertz down to 20 hertz, which is no longer high, but basically what it does is you have this signal, it shrinks the high frequencies and gets rid of them. The low cut does the opposite. It takes your signal and starts from the low frequencies and gets rid of them up until the high frequencies. Demonstrating this is relatively easy. I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to kill my dry signal. I've got my delay at 0, my feedback is 0. So you're not listening to my dry sound. Be careful, this only applies to the feedback loop. I'll show that in a second. This is my guitar signal processed by the delay engine and the feedback loop. So this is the full frequency signal. If I cut it, I get this. So if I do this, you can hear my guitar sound thinning out considerably because I'm only letting a very tiny sliver of signal through. And this is my full frequency signal again. And now with a bit of cut. What is the use of this? Thinning out the sound of the delay so they don't get mixed with your main guitar sound. I'm going to demo first with the full frequency delay sound so you can hear it, and then I'll cut and show you the difference. So as you can hear, the delay sound is falling on top of my dry sound, and it's just creating a mess of sound. If I now tweak this so that I chop off a part of the high frequencies, chop off a part of the low frequencies, I'm not touching my levels. Anyway, you get the idea. If you sculpt your delay repeats, your sound doesn't trip over each other as much. Obviously, I've got really high output levels on the effects. You probably wouldn't use this as loud as I am, but again, I'm just trying to demonstrate an effect. So the next parameter is also related to these two, is the feedback EQ type. And again, you can have another low cut, another high cut, again on the feedback loop. And this time you can have a low shelving, so let's just show low cut and high cut will pretty much do the same stuff as these two. Difference is now you can choose the order of the filter, which dictates the slope of the filter. First order filter cuts 6 dB per octave, second order cuts 12 dB per octave, so it's more abrupt. It will cut more of bass frequencies. Let me see if I can demonstrate that. Again, I will kill dry and everything, so you only get my sound processed by the delay. So this is going to be my full fat sound. I'm going to bring it up to the filter to 500 Hertz. It's now cutting below 500 Hertz at 6 dB per octave. If I go to second order, it's still cutting at 500, but at 12 dB per octave, i.e. it's dropping off a lot faster. That's the low cut. The high cut is the same thing, but again, with only one control, frequency control. So now instead of cutting below, it'll cut from above. So the same as these two. Shelving will cut or boost depending on your control of the EQ gain at this slope. So between 3 dB and 12 dB per octave. So let's try a low shelve means that you choose your center frequency. So in this case, I'm going to choose 400 just because it's here, and I'm going to boost 10 dB at 3 dB per octave. If I cut, you will have heard that as I turned down the EQ gain, my sound got louder. This can be relatively contrary to what you were expecting. It's because this EQ is level compensated. So if I'm boosting below 400 Hertz, the algorithm is making all of my sound quieter so that it can boost without clipping. So I'm going to demonstrate again. So you can hear my sound relatively thick below 400 Hertz. If I bring it down to 0, my sound is louder but not as thick. And now I'm going to cut down the same 10 dB, even louder but with a thinner sound. So the algorithm is just compensating the EQ to make sure that the final level is relatively similar when it sums all of the energy of all of the frequencies. I'm going to now try doing the same at 12 dB per octave just to see what happens. Very thin sound. Full frequency as expected for 0 gain, and 10 dB, it's now really thick sound at 400 Hertz. Carrying on, I'm going to go to the high shelving. If you do high shelving at 700, let's try this at 3 dB per octave. And I'm going to start cutting down on the gain. It does the same as you've heard before, but this time on the high frequencies. Let's try 12 dB per octave just to check what's going on. Very boxy. Everything above 800 Hz is now cutting at 10 dB. Well, it's cutting 10 dB at 800 Hz, and the curve is pointing down at 12 dB per octave. And finally, on the per EQ, this means parametric EQ, you get a bell time curve. So you can decide the center frequency. I'm going to put it at 700 and something Hertz. Yeah, that's fine. I'll give it a slight bump. And here you can choose the bandwidth of that. If you know EQs, if you're used to the terminology surrounding EQ, bandwidth is almost the opposite of Q, even though it does the same. With Q, the higher the Q, the narrower the frequency band that you're affecting. With bandwidth, it's the other way around. So if I do a 0.10 bandwidth, it affects only that tiny sliver. I'm going to bump it so you can hear it. Again, see, as I'm pushing my gain up, the algorithm is still bringing my level down so it doesn't clip and oversaturate. So I'm going to reduce it here. And as I increase my bandwidth, you're going to hear more frequencies being affected. This is basically all of the signal being affected. So let's see what this does in the context of the delay signal. So I'm going to have my delay, I'm going to put some feedback on, I'm going to bring my level slightly down, and now you can hear the delay tails. I'm going to increase tails a bit. I'm going to chop off high frequencies, chop off a bit of low frequencies, and I'm going to turn this off just for comparison. Now I'm going to activate my parametric EQ, and I'm going to cut, okay, I'll cut 6 dB with relatively wide bandwidth at 700 Hz. As you can hear, the delays are there, they're still very present, but now I have space to play the guitar on top of the delays. Okay, this is what you can do with the EQ on the delay. Next parameter on this page is the output level. As you can see, we have a few more grayed out parameters. Let's not worry about those for now. Output level does exactly what it says on the tin. It's the output level of the effect back into the signal path. After that, you've got the dynamic parameters. So this is the bit where you can do ducking with your delay. Let me see if I can show you this. So I've got my sound set up. Consider this a compressor for your feedback loop. So this sets your threshold, this sets how much you want to reduce your delays, the level of the tails, and this dictates how long it will take to release those tails and come back. I'm going to once again exaggerate. If I leave my sensitivity or threshold at 0, you can hear all of the delay trails as they were, right? As I start bringing my sensitivity down, see, while I'm playing, you can't hear the tails. And when I stop playing, my tails come back up. I'm going to give it more feedback and full volume so you can hear it clearer. So as long as my dry signal is above this threshold, and you can set this, you've got a 50 dB range, because your threshold is going to vary according to where you have your delay in your signal chain. So this is the parameter that you'll have to tweak and find out for each specific situation how much sensitivity do you want. And this dictates how much you want to duck your signal. So I'm going to do it again as I was, so healthy feedback level. And instead of damping 100 dB, which just killed the sound, I'm just going to dampen it by 10 dB. See, so now as I'm playing, you can still hear it. And when I stop, it comes back up. The final control, the dynamic release, let me illustrate the difference. I'm going to keep my damping at 100 dB. I'm going to increase my feedback again. I'm at 95% feedback. Listen to the time it takes for the delays to come up again after I stop playing. So I'm going to play 3 chords. Okay, so you can't hear them while I'm playing. I'm going to play a bit more now. So you heard it try to come up while I was still playing. That means that my sensitivity, my guitar signal was coming below the threshold of sensitivity. So I'm going to whack it down to 40. And this dynamic release parameter tells you how quick the signal is going to be to react after your guitar signal comes below the threshold. So you see, it's almost instant. If you, not that one. If you pull it up to 1000, i.e. 1 second, it starts ramping up in a much slower way. And that's the dynamic delay parameters. And lastly on this page, you've got the Subdivisions menu. Unless you're using a Flashback II standalone pedal, you only need to use the Subdivision up menu. If you have the Flashback II, then you know that little toggle that sits between the delay time and the level? This is where you set them up. So you have the up, mid, and down position. You can set your subdivisions here in these. Every other pedal, you only use the up menu. When you open it, you see a series of numbers and random punctuation signals. They're not random. The 4 stands for 4th notes, 8 for 8th notes, 16 for 16th notes. When you see a third in front of something, it means it's a triplet. So reading the menu from the top, it means you've got dotted fourths, 4th notes, 4th triplet of 4th notes, dotted 8s, 8s, triplet 8s, 16th notes, and then you get to the plus sign. This means that you have a 4th and an 8, 4th plus dotted 8 and 8, and in the last one you've got a dotted 8 and a 16th note. This works in conjunction with the delay time up here. So when you set your subdivision to 4th note, the time that you set right here is the delay time that you're going to get. So if I'm putting here 400 milliseconds and I've got a 4th, this is a 400 millisecond delay time. If I come here and set my subdivision to dotted 4th, you hear it slowing down. So even though my delay is still set at 400, I'm now hearing a 600 milliseconds delay. If I do a triplet, it now becomes a lot quicker, because instead of a 4th note, I have a triplet of a 4th note, while still set at 400 milliseconds. If you want to set a dotted 8, so going back to 4th, if you set your 400 milliseconds delay, you got, right? This is my rhythm, that. This is the dotted 8. from a very simple standpoint, you might be asking yourself, but why do I need this? Because I can simply set my time here. Well, you need this if you're using tap tempo. So you will always tap the tempo of the song that you're playing, and depending on what you set here, the pedal will give you the correct subdivision for that, so it makes your life a lot easier. The other thing hiding in this menu is, if you're using the flashback in a stereo configuration, as I am here, you can activate the ones that have the plus symbol and get full stereo. So in this case I've got 4+8, and you can hear one side dying a lot faster than the other one. If you do 4+.8, you've got... Let me increase delay time a bit so we can get more separation between the repeats. Okay, so this is how you get full stereo separation out of the digital algorithm. Rest of the tabs, they work exactly in the same way that we've seen on the previous episode on modulation, link there, I think. And the Octave doesn't work unless you start with the proper algorithm. More of that in a second. Finally, expression pedal, mash, product settings, they are the same that we've seen in the first episode. Again, link there, I think. So you already know how to work those tabs. If you don't, go watch them. So I'm going to jump now to the second algorithm, which is the dual delay. And what we have here, I'm already twiddling knobs because those values were very high. What you have on the digital dual is basically the same stuff that you had on the other one, but now instead of being limited to controlling your stereo signal with the subdivisions menu, now you can actually set your delay times differently for both channels, which is what I'm going to do here. So say you want a slapback of, no, actually 100 wasn't horrible, followed by an ambient delay at 600. And you can hear that they're working in parallel, so they're not series, so you don't hear the 100 millisecond feeding into the 600, you just hear the 100 milliseconds dying and the 600 carrying on. You also have separate feedback control on both of them, so for instance I can have my slapback, so the slapback dies instantly. And my 600 carries on, right? Okay, so you have the exact same feedback high cut and low cut parameters you had. You had the EQ type, and now if you're using this in stereo, you might be thinking, but I don't want to have two different delays and two different sides if I'm using them for different... Yes, of course not. So you have the pan control. You can do both of them panned at 0. And now you have your slapback and your ambient delay carrying on. Okay, or you can very simply set both of them for a very similar settings, both in delay and feedback, and you can pan them and get weird stuff. You can activate modulation. Yeah, let's play a bit with vibrato, let's increase the depth, let's throw modulation mix. And again, the other things you have is subdivision up, ignore the other ones, you still can control all of the dynamic stuff, you can't do anything with reverse just yet. So that's all there is to the digital dual. It's being able to control the two different channels of the delay with completely independent parameters when it comes to delay time and feedback. On to the next algorithm, tape analog. The tape or analog algorithm was released together with the Flashback II pedal, and basically it brings the tape delay emulation to a whole new level in the TC Electronic pedals. Whereas before, to simulate a tape, you'd have to use the regular digital delay algorithm and cut on the feedback response and increase and put some vibrato in the repeats. With the tape or analog, if you notice, there is no modulation tab, there is no Octave tab, everything is done on the tape delay tab, because now you can control both delay lines independently. So you can do, let's do this by numbers, 220 here, let's do 440 here. Okay. Your feedback controls are also here, down, and they're both separate for both delay lines. But now you have the wow and the flutter controls. If you know anything about tapes, you will have heard of these parameters. Wow controls the low frequency warble of the tape. The flutter controls the high frequency warble. I can show you more easily by killing my dry signal. If you also notice, the delay time is now limited between 60 milliseconds at the minimum. On the other control it was 0, on the other algorithm it's 60 on this one, and whereas maximum on the digital is 7,000, here it's 800. So let me demonstrate to you wow and flutter by killing my dry signal. So you're now going to hear the guitar with a bit of delay, but again, this is just the processed sound. It's just a processed signal. I'm going to exaggerate and go wow in the maximum value of 10%. And you hear this random warble on the sound. Again, remember, we're just listening to one delay tail, repeat even. And I'm now going to cut the wow and increase the flutter to 10% too. And it's a much faster, also random, but a much faster warble on the tape. So I'm now going to put both of them 10% because yes. And the result is a tape delay machine with serious problems and old tape. As with the digital delay, you have low cut frequencies and high cut frequencies. Difference here, now you have a Q control. And the Q control is going to dictate the shape of your EQ curve at the corner frequency. So when you have the minimal Q, 0.7, in this case 0.70, your EQ curve is going to start dropping off smoothly at the center frequency. As you increase the Q, your curve is actually going to go up before it comes down. So it will give you a little boost in frequency before it then drops off. So let's try and illustrate this. I'm going to cut, on the high frequencies, I'm going to cut at 3.15. I'm going to keep it, so let's show full frequency first. Now I'm going to bring it to 315. And you can hear the top end's gone. But now I'm going to throw my Q to the maximum. And you hear this resonance peak at 3K. That makes it sound like the high frequencies have actually been increased. Yes, they have. In the center frequency, there's a little bump, and then it drops off entirely. Let's do the same at, let's try it, 315. So you can hear that full frequency, now 315. My low end's gone, and now I'm going to bump this. Much more boxier sound because of this bump in frequency at 315. So I'm going to cut this down again so we can move on to the next one. The filter routing. This dictates where these filters, where this EQ filter comes in the feedback loop. If you set it to internal, it's placed, you remember that little schematic that I drew in the air earlier that says that your dry signal goes into the effects engine and then gets circulated in a feedback loop? If the internal means that this filter, this EQ filter, is in this loop. So every time your signal passes through it, it's going to get chopped off again. If it's post, it's after the feedback loop, so your signal only gets chopped off once. I'll try to demonstrate this, probably again with the 315. Obviously, I'm going to need to increase the feedback, otherwise you're not going to be able to hear anything. And by increasing the feedback, I'm actually going to set a delay time. Let's go for 360 on both lines. Oh, yeah. So now pay attention to the high frequencies. And as you can hear, you get my full frequency sound first, and then you get several repeats that sound exactly the same. Obviously lower level, but they sound the same when it comes to frequency. If I change the filter to internal, okay, do you hear the difference now? So you get my full frequency sound in the beginning, and then you get one repeat with one sound, and then it starts like resonating into that frequency at the 3.15 in this case. It starts resonating while dropping everything else off. You almost hear the... That's what the filter routing does. Let's try and do the same with boxier sound here. The next parameter is the clip type, which is associated with clip drive. Again, this is a type of saturation distortion that's introduced into the feedback loop. Again, it's level compensated, so you can start pushing the clip drive upwards, and the algorithm is going to start lowering the level so that it doesn't distort or overdrive too much. And you've got all of these clip type levels to choose from. My advice is spend some time with this, go through this list, try to listen to the differences. Some of them are subtle at best, and YouTube is just going to destroy everything, so you really need to spend some time with the TonePrint editor yourself to try and listen to the ones to this and understand which ones you like the best. So, but you can hear it. Okay, I'm going to go back to my clean sound. You can hear it dirtying up the... I'm going to drive it hard, and it's really clipping, right? Let me just make sure it's not my preamp. It's not my preamp clipping. This is the algorithm just clipping it. If I'm going to go for hard clipping. So yeah, clip symmetry will dictate how symmetrical is the clipping of the waveform in the feedback lines. If you've used overdrive pedals in the past, you've heard of symmetrical versus asymmetrical clipping. You know that tubes have also a type of clipping depending on how the circuit is designed. Again, some of these changes are relatively subtle. You need to listen to them with either a pair of headphones or really good speakers to understand the difference, but nothing really replaces time with the parameters. Now you know what to listen for. Bump your drive up, choose a clip type, choose a clip symmetry, play with it, see if you like it, see if it inspires you, tweak your parameters, and hopefully you'll come up with something that is interesting for you. Finally, the tape inertia parameter. This controls how quickly the motors on a real tape echo unit would take to react to any change in delay speed. You know, the way that you change your delay speed on a real tape machine is by making the tape go faster or slower. The tape inertia parameter dictates, so when you change the speed of the tape, how quickly does it catch up to you, or how slow in this case. So the higher the inertia value, the slower the tape is to catch up. In terms of sound, what this causes is, if you're not moving your delay time, nothing changes. There's absolutely no difference. Between having this here, let me just adjust my delay time to... Okay, so having my delay time at 420 milliseconds with tape inertia at 0 or at 1, exactly the same thing. The difference happens if you want to start playing with the tape, with the delay. And I'm going to have the inertia at 0.37 just to show you how it works. If I've got my delay time at 422, I'm going to increase my delay time. I'm going to play a chord and increase my delay time over that chord. See, so as I move the knob, as I moved the knob, the sound became lower in frequency because my tape slowed down. And then it took a bit of time to catch up to the new delay time. So I'm going to do it again. And then my frequency comes up again. Sorry, back my mic. Conversely, if I start at 800 and make it faster, I'm going to get... Okay, so my sound goes higher before it catches up. If I decrease the inertia, it's instant. This variation is a lot quicker to happen, so I'm going to do it again the other way. Okay, and finally with inertia in maximum. It's still going. Still going, still not there. I'm going to do it again the other way. And it's still starting to go up and go up and go up. So it's really slow. So this means that the tape is now starting to get a bit faster and blah, blah, blah. So again, this really only has an effect if you are changing your delay time in real time while playing. So with mash or with tap effects, with your expression pedal, you can have this warble sound. The other thing that controls this parameter is this, the menu of inertia type between exponential or soft. Soft is the one that we've been demonstrating. Exponential will make it react, start slow and end fast. So let's go to this one. Let's try with higher values. So this effect combined with a really healthy dose of feedback is where you start getting the glitchy analog delay effects, which are very fun. But again, this only has effects on your sound when you're changing your delay time in real time while playing. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. That's all for the tape analog algorithm. So we're now going to go into number 4, the ping pong algorithm. And the ping pong is basically a digital delay. You will see that you only have control over one delay time. The other two are grayed out because this is what happens. It's a ping pong. It goes from one side to the other. The difference you have to the digital delay is now you have a width control, so you can have your width to 0 and go everything in mono, or you can start opening up or you can go full left-right. That's the only difference. Your subdivisions will still control how quick your delay goes with relation to this quarter note time. And if you select something that has 2 notes, instead of the subdivisions jumping up and down like they did with the digital delay in stereo, it will only assume the first number. So it's a 4th note in this case, it'll be a dotted 8 in that one. So that's how you control the subdivisions menu in this situation. Always behaves as if you're doing a mono delay. You can do modulation with ping pong, just like you would with any other delay. Don't forget to bump that up, and you get some. That's it for ping pong delay. So algorithm number 5 is reverse delay, where you can skip this delay because they don't do anything, and you can come straight to the reverse delay, and it's your typical reverse delay. Okay, your feedback controls the number of repetitions you have in reverse. And if you want that typical just reverse, you kill your dry signal, you put your feedback at 0, and you control your reverse delay time here. I'm going to make it a big one. And that's a reverse delay. Nothing more to it than just that. Again, you can use modulation. You can't use the OctaveR unless you start with TonePrint that already has it. And speaking of OctaveR, you have the ones that are based on crystal delays, in which everything else is the same, but now the OctaveR is active. So if I have some sound here. And now the OctaveR output in the router tab is active, so okay, no octave. Crystal and shimmer. Delay and modulation are doing the same thing that we've just seen in the digital algorithm, and now the OctaveR does the same thing that it did in the Hall of Fame video that we've looked at last month. So you still have the same number of input filters, you have the same filtering on those filters. This didn't sound good, but that's what it is. The number of filters, the Q, the bandwidth of the filters, the tilt, the base frequency of that filter, and the spacing between the filters. So again, it's one of those situations you will need to spend some time with this to make sure that you can listen to the differences, because not all of them are extremely apparent, especially over a YouTube video with all of the signal compression that's going on. My tip that I'm going to leave you with is, if you really want to hear what's going on without any effect from anything else, kill your dry signal, kill your feedback, bring your delay sound, your delay time to 0, and now what you're hearing is just what's coming out of the OctaveR. You might want to kill your modulation too here. And now you're hearing your dry signal processed by the OctaveR. So you can almost make a 12-string guitar out of this. That's it for today. If you found this useful, just drop me a coffee at coffee.com/battleplatform. We still have a few episodes to go in this series. There's still quite a few TonePrint effects to talk about. I am probably going to drop a poll on my Twitter account. Just follow me on Twitter if you don't yet, so twitter.com/battleplatform. I'm going to put up a poll one of these days about which video you want me to do next, which effect you want to tackle next. So if you want to have a say about that, go follow me on Twitter and vote on that poll. Until then, have fun editing and hit me in the comments. Let me know what you're doing with your tone prints and what your favorite combinations of parameters are for your... if you have any doubts, please let me know, and I will either respond to them in the comments, or I will do a Q&A at some point. The channel is getting very close to 1,000 subscribers now. Thank you very much. It really means the world. I will do a Q&A briefly after the 1,000 subscriber mark. I will probably do a live Q&A. I'll let you know when that happens. So if you have any questions that you want to see me answer live and scramble to find words and that stuff, just show up and ask your questions and we will talk about these things. Until then, I've been Philippe and have fun.